Welcome to Parenting Teens, the podcast where we navigate the ups and downs of raising teenagers. As founders of Ramp Nutritional Products for Teens, we're real parents going through the same challenges, and we bring on experts to offer unique insights and inspiration. Join our community and know you're not alone in your struggles. Hello, and welcome to the Parenting Teens podcast. I'm Annie. I'm here with my friend and business partner, Simona Irwin. And today we are doing a solo episode. Well, solo in that there's just the two of us. And we are doing a 3-month check-in, which is something that we said we were going to do when we recorded our very first quote unquote solo episode. And we said we would circle back and check in and see how we were both feeling. And we're in an interesting season, literally and metaphorically. So, it seemed like a good time to dive in, to check in and do the gut check and sort of like talk it through and see how we're both feeling at this moment. So maybe Simona, I just did a little welcome and intro. Is there anything you'd like to say off the top?
Yeah, I mean, I love what you said about the 3-month check-in. I actually totally forgot that's part of what we were doing today. So I love that because it also helps me to kind of look back and see where we've been over the past few months and where we are now. And like the season, of course, that we're in is the very beginning of summer. Here in Toronto in Canada, our kids got off school just right at the end of June. So we're kind of entering the first week. My kids are at day camp. Yours, I think, are at overnight camp.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a change, it's a change to the daily schedule. It's a change, there's so many changes that are happening so quickly. And so, business side, life side, all the different areas, I think I'm definitely feeling that transition into a new period.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if we spoke about this in our first podcast. I know the two of us have spoken about this, but I think both of us have felt that this sort of tween teen time, as you just alluded to, is this time of like exceptional rapid change. It kind of just feels like things start to, whereas I personally felt like those first few years of life was just everything was, I was always on my toes. You just never know what you're going to get with your little baby. And then it was kind of like slow, like molasses. The days just blend into the next, from like 2 to 12. It's like it looks pretty much the same. And now again, things are changing quickly and the kids' needs are changing quickly. And as you said, business. I mean, we're in these sort of parallel seasons where we've got these like rapid changing tweens and teens. And it's sort of probably not literally mirroring, but we're also professionally like growing up a business and trying to like nurture it and help it to develop and like let it be independent and doing all the things. Do you feel comfortable talking about some of so maybe we'll just leave professional for a bit and really stick with parenting teens, which is what this podcast is about. Do you feel comfortable talking a little bit about the stage of your kids and kind of how this summer is looking same and or different from previous summers?
Yeah. So I have a soon-to-be 12-year-old and soon-to-be 10-year-old. They like to just call themselves 10 and 12 now. We've got a few months to go, though. But my older one is a junior camp counselor this summer at an amazing nature camp that we all love so much. He is like a huge nature nerd since birth, and so he's loving it. He's also at this stage of life where he is ready to be independent. So we have, we got him an Apple Watch. We're trying to hold off on the phone. So he's got his little watch and he is allowed to go out on his own. So he took a trip recently just with a friend. They were like, okay, we're going to meet up on bikes and then we're going to bike to this local park and we're going to take a swim and then we're going to go out for burgers. And they hatched this huge plan. And, I had to really sit with it for a minute. Like, we live in a big city. It's like, feels super safe. It is super safe. And sometimes really unsafe things happen, like everywhere. And so I had to sit with that moment of like, okay, my kid is asking for independence and this is so good and I want this for him. And like, how do I just do this? How do I let go in this way? And we did, and like his watch didn't work for half of it, and all the things kind of came up, but I was fine. I was surprised. I was like, cool and fine. And he called me and he was like, I sent you these messages and my watch didn't work. And he was just so responsible. And I was so happy for him because I remember, I mean, way younger than 12, we used to go, I feel like 8 or 7. It was like, see
Totally.
ya, just like get out of the house. And we went off on our own. But I could see he came back and he was like 2 inches taller and just like feeling so good. And he's like, we got our own dinner. And I love that he wants that because I know
Mm.
other people have, the other issue of like their kids don't want that. But my kids, I think similar to me, are pining for independence as early as possible, which I guess is good.
Yeah, for me, it feels, I mean, I'm always reluctant and I'm not, challenging that language. I think, to me, it feels in my gut good. And I also just want to honor, like, if there's parents of kids who don't feel like that, I don't think that's necessarily the opposite of bad. Just like, I remember one of my sons was in diapers like quite late, like late, quote unquote. And I just remember like a great aunt saying something like, well, he's not going to go to grade one in a diaper. Like, who cares? And
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, you're right. It actually does. Like, it does. So we know it, that, a lot of kids are going out at 12, some maybe not till 15. Again, it's all, but I think that, but I agree with you in that feeling of, um, seeing your kids want and strive for that autonomy, independence, and competence. I think that's the good part. That's the piece that feels really, um, I don't want to say healthy, because again, there's an implication that if they're not doing it, it's not healthy. And of course, that's not, I don't think, what either of us mean. But I don't know. I've thought a lot, especially as my kids are a little bit older than yours. They're 13 and 15. Like, what am I doing? Like, what is my actual job with these people? Like, what will I ever feel like I've done a good job? I mean, invariably, we're all making
Yeah.
mistakes. And then there's moments where you're like, oh, I think I think, you see them interact with somebody and you're like, okay, is that nature? Is that nurture? Like, hopefully it's a bit of nurture. Maybe I just like helped instill a little bit of that, respectfulness or consideration. But I do think among probably other metrics or objectives or goals that would make me feel like I've done something good or right,
Yeah.
is for them to feel a sense of independence, autonomy, and competence. I think that's, and whatever age that starts at. But when I think we start to see it trickling in the 12, 13, 14, 15, and again, I think it's really satisfying. I find it really personally very satisfying seeing my kids. It's painful too, though. That's the opposite of it. It's like
Yes.
thrilling and terrifying and pride filled and sad. It's all the
Yeah.
things. It's
It's
all the
so
things.
true. I find that for me, I don't know, I didn't plan this, but it seems to be what's happening, where it's like as my kids are gaining this independence, I also notice that I'm kind of following along with them in some ways. And
Mm,
it's like I'm starting to just in the past, 2 years, it's just like, oh, what do I want to do? And before I had this, I don't know where this idea came from, but it was like, okay, my life is on hold for 20 years. And it's
yes.
like I'm just, a
I'm a
mom and
parent.
and
Yeah.
businesswoman, and but it was all serving the family, serving the child, serving, that unit. And it really, I mean, in a few ways, it kind of was brought up to me just in, different things that happened in my life that it was like, this is not a reasonable plan to shelf myself for 20 years and then kind of come back to it. And so I do find as they grow their independence, what helps me allow for it is like, okay, what do I want to do? And like, what kind of groups can I join? And, what are my passions that I hoped to get back into at some point and starting to open the door to those now, and it's been so rewarding for me in such surprising ways.
I love that, and I love that, I think it would be really interesting to bring on more women to the podcast and talk about that, because I think a lot of people, exactly like what you've just said, talk about this sort of shelving of self for 20 years. And then there's this, again, maybe I'm thinking of like from movies, or I'm thinking of, the urban legend, and then your kids, leave and you're empty nesting, whether you're doing it with a partner or alone. And then you're like, oh, what am I going to do with my life? But it's almost too late. Like, you can't wait until they leave. You have to start when they're starting to leave, when they're doing with their Apple Watch and going for the day and riding their bikes and getting burgers. And you're like, oh, I have time. Because that's what
Yes.
I guess that's what I'm a big piece of this past school year. And it's even more notable, as you said, my kids are literally gone for this month, is we have time. And I
Yes.
don't know how to fill the time. And I'm
Yeah.
almost embarrassed to say that out loud, because I don't ever remember having a problem filling time
Mm-hmm.
before kids. And I feel like I haven't had a problem filling time since I've had kids. There's always something to do. I mean, I can make work. We can make cleaned out closets. I made lists. We're going looking at pizza. I mean, it's all like important and not important stuff.
Yes.
And then, but that's like, you don't want to fill time when you're trying to take care of yourself. It should be like from the heart. It should
Yeah.
be, there's no shits in life, but you don't want to just be like, I'm ticking down the 7 hours till I have to go to bed.
Yes.
You're not just like waiting, because there's also this
Yeah.
feeling. I said this the other day to my husband, just sort of waiting for them to come back, which is kind of pathetic.
Or ruminating on like, what's happening? Like, are
I
they
wonder what they're
okay?
doing right now. Are they thinking about me? No, hopefully they're not, And so
Yeah.
it's as again, I think there's that interesting place of, for many years, they go and they come back. They go and they come back. They go and they come back. And then eventually they'll go, and then they'll really go physically and then emotionally and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
I think we need to practice it ourselves over the years, so that we're not just like stuck.
Just like waiting at the door, like looking
I
at the window, like,
know.
don't forget about mom.
Always here for you, baby. Always here, waiting and ready to jump. Yeah, I
Yeah.
know. It just reminds me of like waiting when they would cry in the middle of the night, like that kind of
Oh,
that
yeah.
instinct of just jumping and running. So it's hard to unlearn that in your body, I
Yes.
think.
Oh my gosh, that's so true. It is such an instinct and also a desire, right? A desire, I think, for so many of us in this generation to also show up a little bit more for our kids too. I think we all have kind of these memories of the 80s kids or whatever, where it's like you're kind of on your own. And I think there was a desire sometimes to have a parent kind of show up in like a more in-depth way. So then we try that, and we try that on with our own kids, and then this very natural independence starts. And you're right, it's like, okay, well, what does this look like now, and how do I do this? And then it's finding that self again. It's like, oh, at 42, like, what do I want to be doing? Like, what am I interested in? And it's like, and instead for me too, before everything was like work focused or health focused. And so if it went in those buckets, it was worthwhile. And I'm really trying now to look at things in a different way, where it's like, what is like, heart focused or passion focused, and it's, it's not always easy. It feels impractical. There's no end goal
Yes.
to those things.
It's so true. I think there's been such a container for the last, 10, 15 years for most of us who have kids between, 9 and 16, where everything kind of has a point. You're not just most people are not just doing stuff for, shits and giggles, just for
Yes.
fun. I do have some friends, I know we've talked about one friend of mine in particular who has made a really good practice of pursuing pleasure and just doing things
Yes.
because it feels good. And, it's triggering. It's triggering for a lot of people, because a lot of people think it's like, it reads as selfish. It reads as indulgent, entitled. Like, there's a lot of things that
So
come
harsh.
with
All those words, I'm like, oh, they're
No,
like so
but
painful.
they are. But when you see a mother
Mhm.
who's taking time for herself to do things that have no point,
Yes.
I think a lot of people get stirred up about it, you know?
Yes. So true. I think and we were even taught, I feel like even our mothers, like, I remember my mom's judgments on people, whether it was because they had a lot of money or they didn't work or this or that. We remember those, and it's like, we don't mean to, but we do pass those on, and then we limit our lives, right? The way we judge people are the ways that we limit ourselves, and we need pleasure.
Mhm.
We need fun.
So, okay, so what I'm hearing and I'm feeling validated that, people's kids, even, kids who are 12, kids who are older, 13, 15, I'm sure even your younger one is starting to like give you
Mhm.
clues about independence and ways that he's starting to stretch and move away in even small, subtle ways. And maybe the theme for today's podcast is maybe it sounds very dramatic, not like reclaiming the self. That's like way too
Yeah,
much. But
I
it's sort
love
of
it.
as our kids like as our kids move through the tween teen years, like who are we? And I
Yeah.
think also just really, where's that internal compass and what do we want? Because they're
Yes.
going to start to really think about what they want. And that's their job, I think, to be pretty, and I mean this
Yeah,
in like a loving way, like selfish and self-absorbed. So it's pretty
totally.
easy to get pulled into that orbit.
Oh my gosh, yeah, and I think if we don't have our own interests and the interests that feel good, then we become overly pulled into their orbit, and we judge that orbit, and,
Mhm.
and it causes this friction, and, yeah, then the question just becomes like, what do you actually like? What do you want to be doing? Like, what feels good, and how do you I mean, for me, I remember someone did an exercise with me where they were like, think back to when you're little and, just kind of be there and like what brought you joy, like what made you happy. And for me, it was like dancing and like solving mysteries and reading and stuff. So that helped to lead me to find these different communities. And like I joined this like ecstatic dance, like this five rhythms community. And I never pictured myself like feel like
Dancing
I
in the
was like,
park.
no, I was like so stiff and corporate and frozen in a lot of ways, I think. Um, and then to be able to try that on in a new way and like find my fluidity and my body and it's been so amazing and so rewarding and I love it. And when I'm there, I'm like me, not just like
Mm,
the mother me. It's like, oh, this is like me.
that's very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking. I feel like a not like a spider, but like a web. I feel like there's lots of places I've been and I could go, and I think that I'm waiting for some downloads,
Yeah.
and I don't wanna feel rushed, and I don't feel a gap, but I don't feel a big hole that I need to fill at this moment. I just feel curious, which
Yeah.
maybe is a good first step. But I
Yeah.
just feel but I do feel acutely aware of the space that I have in the time, which is
Mm.
really interesting. I also feel, and this is sort of the opposite of abundance. I feel like scarcity with it in the sense of it's time limited. They're going to be back soon, but I
Yeah.
do know when they come back, they're going to be also. I find often when my kids go away for a little bit, when they come back, just almost like you said, how your son came back, a few inches taller
Yeah.
because of the newfound independence. When my kids go away for a while, they come back. They're not the same. They've matured in many ways. And so, we're going to take this next developmental leap forward. And
Yes.
so, where am I going to be at to show up for them? So, it'll be interesting. We'll see.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Summer camp, like overnight summer camp is, it's next level for me. We haven't done that yet. And I'm like, it's brave.
My husband, who's never been to overnight camp, just has a mental image of like meatballs because he's like just seen the movie. So that's just what he thinks. The kids are just like doing that kind of stuff, which
Yeah.
hopefully not. But okay, so that's on the personal front. So we've got kids. Our kids are in it, and because they're in it, we're in it, and we are developing alongside them and moving through our own like steps of independence and thinking about how we can kind of grow ourselves up along in this time as
Yes.
well. And now, do we want to just touch briefly on 3 months into ramp and kind
Yeah.
of like talk about maybe just like a key learning or a key kind of like aha that maybe each of us have had? Both of us have worked in supplements, natural foods, consumer packaged goods for 20 years each. So, but not with our own brand. And so, I don't know, Simona, is there like yeah, like an aha, a learning, an insight, something that kind of feels juicy for you at this stage? Again, it's in its infancy still. It's so early.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, everything, I think as we both know, just running the different businesses that we have, you have a plan and you have an idea of it, and then life comes and is like, no, like good try, like, and like brings the tornado.
Sure.
And then, it hasn't been a tornado by any sense at all, but there's like, periods of waiting that we didn't think we would have, or, like different little issues that come up, or we're excited to have the products in Canada eventually, and that's going to take a little longer than we hoped. And so there is this sense of waiting and this kind of patience. And so it's interesting because it's like we're in the stage of with our kids, there's like a bit of a speeding up, and with the business, there's a bit of a waiting, or like a bit of a slower pace with some things. So I think for me, it's like finding the balance between that. And then also, of course, it's, we have other things to fulfill. So we both have other jobs.
Mhm.
So it's consulting and, doing different projects. And so there is this busyness to it. And then there is also this waiting too. And so for me, it's been learning how to kind of be patient, and it's like, okay, what are the next few steps that I can take and put into this? And then how can it be okay for me to step back and just like be patient and let it grow, like let it sprout a little bit before I'm like digging through the soil to be like, where's the sprout? And like
Mm.
pull the sprout out. And I'm like, oh no.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
just got to
yeah,
step back and be like, okay, I'm going to focus over here and keep tending to this, but doing these other things. So that's been the learning for me, and it's been a good learning.
yeah,
Yeah, what about
yeah.
you?
Probably in a similar vein. I think that you and I have worked together for a long time now, so I think you've got a good sense of my MO when it comes to work. Is I tend to be more of a sprinter and not always such a great marathon runner. And what I mean by that is I get like bursts of energy where I feel a lot of just like gas to produce and to go. So I kind of like explode with ideas and content and doing. I go into a lot of doing, and I can sustain that for a period of time, and then I go into like hibernation a bit. And so I used to be a little more critical of that approach. It felt a little wasteful and not wasteful. That's not actually the right word. I used to be a little like I'd wanted to almost like sustain that high energy forever in perpetuity,
Yeah.
which is like impossible. Because when I can go, I can really turn myself like crank it up to 10.
Yeah.
And so I think where I see it now is almost use the analogy. Well, you talked about soil, so maybe I'll use another nature metaphor. I see it almost like this like opening and closing, and I feel like I open and
Mm.
I put it out and then I rest, and I do. I'm learning and really trying to see the rest as just as valuable as the output. Um, and is a really big time and important renewal for me to get my next like big wave of inspo and want to do. So as you said, tending to the garden in smaller ways. But I think you and I did a really big lift. I think just like birthing the brand was a huge lift, and
Yeah.
getting everything live and ready to go was a lot of moving pieces on all sides, on the
Yes.
marketing side, the finance side, the operations side, the production. I mean, we should probably do a whole episode on how to start a brand. And like
Yes.
what are like let's talk about it. Let's talk about let's peel back the curtain and let's tell everybody about some of the details. because that might be interesting for people. So there was this
Yeah.
huge lift, I think, on both of our parts. And then, as you said, there's this waiting that is super normal. That's a part of many businesses. And I think now we're just sort of there and we're coasting and we're waiting to see, and we've kind of planted some seeds, and now we're watching them grow, and we're doing those little tweaks. And then I think we'll get another wave, and we'll kind of invest our time and energy a lot again. It's an ongoing process, but I guess just really honoring those ebbs and flows of energy feels like a good learning to me, and something I probably could apply to lots of areas of my life instead of,
Yeah.
it's a bit of a gas on, gas off kind of thing. Just coast for a
Yeah.
bit. It's okay to coast.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so that's been a big learning for me, and just really like the other piece, which is probably also applies to our professional and personal life, is just really surrendering to it. And as much as you can hope and want to control it, it's actually more fun to not. And
Yes.
as terrifying as some parts of it, again, personally, professionally, just like open surrender. Like, let's see. It's all a really good story, no matter which way all of it goes.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at.
Oh, I love it. This is the summer of surrender.
Oh, good.
Perfect.
Great. All right. Well, I think we'll probably wrap it up there. This has been a really fun episode. I'm really happy we had a chance to touch base, and I suggest we do it again in 3 months' time.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. Have a good one, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for tuning in to Parenting Teens. We hope you found today's episode informative and helpful. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. If you want to dive deep into teen-related resources, visit our website at drinkramp.com. Do you have a teen-related question? Drop it on SpeakPipe at speakpipe.com/parenting teens. As always, we're here to support you on your parenting journey. Until next time.